Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to today's video and welcome back to my channel. Today is the start of something new on this channel. The first of many to come, and just a really exciting journey, adventure, whatever you want to make it, but it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Let's do this. Everything is so uphill. Like, look at that slant. Little doorway. Somewhere. So uphill. But cute.
Welcome to the Lincoln Ghost Walk this evening. Hope to find out something not only about ghostly sightings in this area of the city, but also some of the more macabre history of this, the oldest and most beautiful part of Lincoln. Now, our first sighting takes us back to 1991. A gentleman was doing a night shift at one of our bakeries in the town centre. And at dawn, when he finished his shift, he struggled up the steep hill that some of you have struggled up. When he got to the corner there, which is the Magna Carta pub, but in those days it used to be a restaurant, he tells us he heard a tremendous noise. And he felt that he had to jump backwards out of the way, otherwise he was going to be run over. He looked to his right. Coming through that archway from the cathedral was an enormous black horse. He tells us it was galloping so fast he could actually see sparks coming up from the cobbles where its iron shoes were catching on. And smoke, steam was pouring out of its nostrils. It was riding that hard. It passed him. He got to about here when he thought he saw somebody stand up in the stirrups, and he distinctly heard somebody shout, "Open up in the name of the king!" And horse and rider galloped straight into the castle, through the gates, which were of course closed, just as they are this evening. There was a gentleman, his name was John Knox, got himself into an argument with the local magistrate over a piece of land just outside the town. Now, we don't know what was important about this bit of land, but it was obviously important enough to somebody to kill for. Because one of the magistrate's servants was murdered. Two of his other servants came forward. They named this John Knox as the perpetrator. Well, they didn't need any more evidence in those days. John Knox was arrested. He was taken to the castle. He was tried. On the evidence of those two other men, he was found guilty, and he was condemned to hang and placed into a condemned cell to await his date with the gallows. The restaurant in question is just over there. It's Brown's Pie Shop. For those of you who might be visiting Lincoln this week, I draw attention to the plaque over the word shop. Now that commemorates the visit to the city of Lincoln and the staying in that building of T.E. Lawrence. Now that is Lawrence of Arabia, not the Lady Chatterley's lover bloke. Sometimes people mix them. But our first ghostly sighting takes place in the upper room. You can see the little window in the roof there. The only access up there is a trapdoor and a ladder. I'm told if you're quick, you go up the ladder you may hear the sound of coins clinking together. When you look up you may see coins passing through the air, as if they're being passed from one hand to another, but no hands are actually visible. And as you step into the room, these coins drop to the floor, roll into the corners and disappear. So maybe somebody was caught up there with their hand in the till. The next sighting's on the room below. That's actually the kitchen of the restaurant. Chef there used to be a lad called Mark. He told us that often he'd be in there quite early on in the morning, before the rest of the staff came in. He said he'd get a funny feeling somebody was watching. Oddly, he said, it always felt as if somebody was staring at him from really low down, as if it was a very small person or perhaps a child. But like most of us, he put it down to his own imagination. Till one day he did something I think we've probably all done if we've been in a room or a house on our own, thought we've heard something. He spoke out loud. It makes you feel a bit more confident. He was just working away when he got a bit of a shiver down his spine. And he whipped round and said, "Is that you again, Humphrey?" What a daft thing to say. But it worked. The feeling went away. So he started doing something else I think we've probably all done on the QT. As he was working, he'd just be singing away to himself. "If that's you there, Humphrey, I don't care, Humphrey." This area's packed with stalls. It's Brown's Pie Shop's busiest time. All the staff come in early to help Mark out. He doesn't want to be seen by the others, skipping round the kitchen, singing to invisible people, so he stops. But I'm afraid to tell you that Humphrey did not like being ignored. Mark started work as usual. He said there was a tremendous bang on the front door. He came down to check. He said there was nobody there, but oddly the key had fallen out of the lock and it was lying on the mat. Well, he thought that was a bit strange as he bent to pick it up. It wasn't half as strange as the scraping sound from the empty kitchen he'd just left upstairs. He made his way rather trepidatiously back into the kitchen. He said there was nobody in there, but the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables with seconds earlier wasn't on the chopping board anymore. It was sticking up by its blade in the wooden floor, and it was waving to and fro. They make an agreement that morning, a pact. Every time a member of staff crosses that threshold for the first time on a morning, as they open up the front door, they shout up, "Good morning, Humphrey!" And they all get on with their work. And they've hardly had a problem since. Well, I say that, except 4 years ago, a lady was in there at lunchtime, dining on her own. And when she'd finished her meal, they're very polite in there, they said, "Was everything all right for you, madam?" And she said, "Oh yes, the food was lovely." But she did have one small complaint. She thought it a bit off, really, that the staff allowed their children to come into the restaurant and muck about when paying diners were eating. She'd found the little boy coming to her table and staring at her throughout her lunch, a bit off-putting. Of course, I had to tell her there were no children in the restaurant that lunchtime. So we believe that lady is the only person who has ever actually seen Humphrey in the flesh, so to speak. Though when Derek Acora of the famous Most Haunted visited Lincoln, he parked his TV van there, and the very first thing he does is go to Brown's Pie Shop and contact the spirit of Humphrey live on the broadcast. The White Hart Hotel is on the other side of this little church. We're going to find out more about it later on in the walk when we've been round the outskirts of the cathedral. But I draw attention to it now because it is one of the oldest buildings in this Vale area. Parts of it go back to the reign of King Richard II, whose heraldic emblem on his shield was a white deer, a white hart. That's why it's called that. Being such an old building, it's got quite a lot of ghostly activity. There's a sight in one of the bedrooms, I wouldn't want to come across it. It's of a young girl. She's described as about 13 or 14. She's wearing a long dress, a pinny and a cap, and she's cowering in the corner of the bedroom. The legend tells us that she was a hotel chambermaid, and that the hotel rat catcher, a much older gentleman, took a bit of a shine to her. He followed her while she was working, cornered her in the bedroom and attempted to press his advances. She didn't like this at all. She tried to fight him off, but he wasn't a man to take no for an answer, and he drew a knife from under his coat and stabbed her to death 10 times. And the sight you see in that room is the little girl's face as the rat catcher stands over her for the 10th and last time. Well, just to let you know, if you ever do go there, the staff don't tell you for obvious reasons if you've been given that bedroom, but they all know it as the sad room, and 3 people have committed suicide in there since 1962. Just before Christmas last year, a gentleman turned up at the tourist information on the corner there, quite late in the afternoon, and he asked the girls who work there if they had knowledge of hotel vacancies in the city for that evening. Well, they asked him a few questions, mostly about how much he could afford to spend, and recommended the White Hart. Following morning, 9:30, when the girls come to open up, this gentleman's waiting on their steps. He said, "I'm sorry, I've not been satisfied at the White Hart. Can you sort me something else out, please?" "Crikey," say the girls, "you better come and tell us what's happened." So he goes in and he tells them. He says, "Oh, last night there were people running up and down the corridor outside my bedroom. Every time I went out after them, they'd already run off, hadn't they? I rang down to reception for somebody to sort it out. Nobody bothered. I could have put up with it, but they kept rattling on my door handle all night. That kept me awake. And you expect better at a hotel of that calibre. So, of course, they sorted him out a different hotel. And as soon as he's left, they all know each other round here, straight on the phone to the girls at the White Hart reception. What went on with this man?" "Oh, yes," said the girls at the White Hart. "Well, somebody did go and check. Every time he rang down, there was never anybody on the corridor. Then we realised, and nobody knew how to tell him. His door is one of the ones we have with a swipe key card and a knob that you push to get in. So if somebody rattled his door handle, they were doing it from the inside of his bedroom. You want to talk to somebody who's seen a ghost in the last 3 weeks, you can go into the Magna Carta. They've got a lady who appears in the bay window on the 1st floor. They've got a lady who appears in the bay window on the 1st floor. We're not quite sure whether she's Edwardian or Victorian from the description of her clothes, but she has a big picture hat on. By all accounts, as you go up the stairs, you may feel her hand on your shoulder. You look round, there's nobody there. You get to the top, she's framed in the window. If you call down, "I can see her again," or whatever, she disappears. But a smell of lavender lingers in the air, and nearly everybody who works in there has had a run-in with her at some time or another.
I'm gonna look at the moon.
I'm just ringing loud. This archway that you've just come through here was built in the 14th century at the request of the clergy of Lincoln Cathedral, who wanted to completely enclose the area around here, keep out the peasant rabble of Lincoln. From some of the stories I've heard, you were a lot safer on the other side of the gate. In the 12th century, a sub-dean called Blomfield was actually attacked while he was at prayer at an altar in the cathedral by one of the dean's servants. This servant was dragged out of the building into this courtyard area here without any formal trial or anything whatsoever. They tied him to a horse's tail. The horse was then whipped all the way up Cannock Hill, no mean distance from here, dragging the man behind it. And when they got there, what was left of him was hanged, drawn and quartered. Though after the journey on the tail, that was probably a blessed release for the poor man. But it's not the only violence the cathedral has seen. The following century, a man called William was attacked on the steps of the west front. He tried to get through the double doors and claim sanctuary, but two priests locked and barred the door and left him to be beaten and left for dead on the steps. The bishop of the time found out about that. He had the two priests excommunicated, which was considered a fate worse than death in those days. And after that, they actually closed the cathedral for what was called a period of cleansing. If you think about the gargoyles on a building like this, there's a nice little run of heads on those little arches. They are there to ward off evil, to keep off the evil eye. And it was thought at that period in history that evil had permeated the stones, the very fabric of the building. So it was closed, they said special prayers, they burnt incense. It was a holy exorcism of the building. I draw your attention to another building with a little window in the roof there. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, that was a lodging house for masons working on the cathedral. During that period, an Irish master mason and his family were lodging there. Soon became obvious to the people in these other houses there was something a bit strange about this family. When the wife was out shopping, she always seemed to be covering her face or holding parts of her body, and the children's crying was heard at ridiculously late hours of the night and early morning. But in those days, nobody said anything. Nobody wanted to interfere. But I'm afraid to say, push came to shove. Because during a particularly violent argument, in her own defence, the wife is said to have stabbed her husband to death, straight through his neck, with his own Masonic chisel. And that couple haunt that building. He, because of his sudden demise, he didn't know what hit him. She, because as an Irish Catholic woman, her dreadful guilt at what she has done has kept her in a purgatorial limbo between our world and the next. And they've been seen only last year. I'm standing here telling this story. Two young women came out of the door. They came up to me and they said, "Well, we can see you through the window, pointing at our house. What are you saying?" So I apologised to the group I was with, repeated what I've just told you, and these girls went, "Well, that explains it." The door bangs and then we see these two like hologram faces hanging in the air. We thought it was a reflection off the television or off our watches or something. We couldn't work it out. I said, "Girls, what are you doing in that house at the moment?" They said, "Oh, we're on a summer school. We're working as carpenters on the cathedral." So even now, 200 years later, they still use that building for the same purpose that they always have done. Now this is the most haunted place in the whole of Lincoln. This can be attested to by this rather nice 18th century gate behind me here. Remember what I just told you about gargoyles warding off evil? That's what that little chap up there is doing. He's keeping off the evil eye, he's warding it away from the building on the other side of the gate. You'll notice this little bit of road looks quite straight. That's because it used to be one of the entrances into the old Roman city of Lindum, Colonia. And Roman soldiers are heard and seen passing along this pathway. When they're heard, it's the brass bits on their armour clanking together. When they're seen, which is a lot more rarely, they're only seen from the knees upwards. Because, of course, they walk with their feet on the level of the road as it existed in their lifetime. And in the interim 2,000 years, with nearly 2 feet of stone, cobble, rubble and tarmac on top of the old Roman road. But the soldiers don't know that. They just keep using the pathway as they always have done. Interestingly, this building was a building site a few years ago, ground to a halt for 3 weeks because they found Roman graves and had to do the archaeology. Do be careful while we stand here. Don't want anybody knocked over by the severed head that bounces down here on occasions. This severed head belongs, would you believe, to a bishop of the cathedral, Bishop Hugh. Now, when Bishop Hugh died, he was buried in a lovely stone sarcophagus in the cathedral. But a bit later on in history, when they were doing the angel choir, they moved it, and his head came apart from the rest of his corpse. Somebody had a bright idea. We'll stick it on a plinth, because by that time in history, relics or body parts of famous or saintly people, and by this time they've made Bishop Hugh into Saint Hugh, can be used to attract rich pilgrims to your city, who come to touch them, to gain what are called indulgences. I suppose you'd have to say they're a little bit like holy brownie points, get you into heaven faster. But as a holy relic, it's worth a fortune, especially on the black market round the courts of Europe. So two men decide they will steal it. They sneak into the cathedral, they put the head in a box, and they hide it under their robes. Their escape route passes the graveyard at the top of this hill. Graveyards in those days are not the neat and tidy places that they are today. Lots of bodies buried in quite shallow soil. Lots of tasty tidbits sticking out of the soil for the carrion birds to feast on. And a large flock of carrion crows is roosting in the trees of the graveyard. As the thieves sneak past, the birds flap up, startling two passing soldiers who automatically go to draw their swords. Well, the thieves think they've been rumbled and make a break for it. The soldiers are instantly suspicious of two men running for no reason, and they set off after them. And birds and thieves and men and box come careering down here in a right unholy melee. Somebody slips, somebody trips. The box is dropped, it smashes open, and Bishop Hugh's head bounces all the way down here, coming to rest just before the archway at the bottom. Now the two thieves are arrested and hanged for their crime. And what's left of Bishop Hugh's head, would you believe, is stuck with jewels to replace the bits that have dropped off and replaced back on the plinth. Though you'll be pleased to know, if you're visiting the cathedral any time soon, it is now safely back in the sarcophagus with him. But to this day, the people who live in this house say at night they sometimes hear a sound. And it sounds like the dull thud of an old leather ball bouncing down the street. On Halloween 5 years ago, lady standing about there, I hadn't even started telling the story, and she sort of squeaked and did this. Well, we all had a laugh. How many had she had before she come on the ghost walk? But she said no. She said she was stone cold sober, standing in flat winter boots listening to me, when something caught her right in the back of her knees. Maybe it was the head. It's not the only thing that's happened on the ghost walk. Another lady backed up over there. She told me afterwards, she said I wanted to light a cigarette. I just didn't want the sound of me lighter to distract the group. Well, we didn't hear that, but when she shrieked and jumped 50 foot in the air, we did all turn round. She said just as she was lighting her cigarette, she had distinctly felt a cold hand in the small of her back shove her out of the way. I was just about to tell her about Nanny. Nanny comes out of this building here. It used to be a medieval tithe barn. Oh, we call her Nanny, by the way, because she's carrying a little baby in her arms. She crosses the road and disappears round into the terrace. Obviously, as that lady was lighting a cigarette, she just got in Nanny's way, and Nanny shoved past her. A lot of people in Lincoln will tell you they won't use this shortcut. It's a bit weird, it's a bit spooky, people will tell you. As you go through the arch at the bottom, your eyes will automatically be drawn to the right. And in the periphery of your vision, you may see what is either a monk or priest who is said to have hanged himself from the arch. The people who live in this house with the big white bay window on the front say at night in the summer when they have their windows open, they can hear the sound of the rope creaking. He's described as having long black robes and a flying saucer on his head. He hasn't got a flying saucer on his head at all. What he's got is one of those very wide-brimmed, narrow-bowled hats the old-fashioned clergy used to wear. Other people have met a little old lady down there. She asks if she can take your arm on the steps. You get halfway down and she disappears. And people suddenly remember she was very tiny. She spoke oddly, she was dressed funny, and she was rather smelly. We believe that she was a medieval apothecaress who used to have a lean-to against the tithe barn in medieval times, from which she used to give out herbal remedies, simples they were called in those days. And people have been taking photos down there with cameras and mobile phones. We've had some very unusual results, some of which are on our Facebook page. Glowing orbs of ectoplasm in the sky around people, or moving across in front of them on a video. And when you zoom in on them, there's detail on them that look like faces or planets. A tiny figure reaching out of the photo with glowing hands. We think that was the apothecaress. A woman with white hair and a slack jaw who looks as if she's died of fright and is still screaming. A cowled figure, clearly over a foot above the street level as it exists today. Other people get down there and find they get strange smoky forms on the photos, or cameras and phones won't work. Yet when we get back up the top, everything seems to be fine again. You may see what is either a monk or priest who is said to have hanged himself from the arch.
This is where the archway that was on about.
And when you zoom in on them, there's detail on them that look like faces or planets.
This is where the archway that was on about. And we just got to climb this hill again so we don't miss the story. I have just caught some crazy orbs in them photos. This here was the house we were just at. I don't know why. The gates. Where was that? That one. Guys, this is insane already. Interesting to say the least. Now we're off to the cathedral to maybe catch some of our own evidence. It's a full moon tonight. What are the chances? The full moon was not planned. But we're about to go and sit on these stairs. It is quite warm in here actually, like weirdly warm. Here's the courtyard. So pretty. Like it's almost, without the lights it would have been stuck in time. That was very weird. We're getting looked at, like proper looked at, but it's fine. We're doing our job. Leonie's got the dowsing rods. Hayley's got the SLS camera. And I'm filming and necrophonic app. So let's go. I'm scared. Is there anybody here with us?
It's like he's trying to push it.
Yes.
Is anyone here?
The bells are
Can
going
you
off.
say hi?
Satan. Possessed?
Get out.
I'm a girl. That was a proper accent. Is there anybody here with us? Can you tell us your name?
You put the guys on. You put the guys on. Put the dolls on.
Can you tell us your name?
God, we are at the cathedral. Are you here?
Is there anybody?
Oh.
They've crossed.
Could you put them back together in a straight line?
God,
Yeah, no.
Marley. People died here. Plus, yes. They didn't die here.
Do you stand next to us so they can see us? Is there anybody here that wants to speak to us? It's like a really weird circle behind your face then.
Really?
I don't know, it's like my eyelashes, like the glare from that the flash, but... No, it was like a proper ring.
Right. What shall I
My eyes are playing tricks on me here.
Are you trapped here? Across the...
Is there anybody here with us? We was going to come inside, but they've locked the doors because it was open during the tour but locked after, so there's no way of us getting in the cathedral. Yeah. We'll have to come back one day.
Yes.
It's not in focus. I don't know why it's not focusing.
I don't know.
Okay, we're going to do one more spirit box session before we go. Is there anybody here with us that wants to talk? Can you tell us your name? Someone said hi, B. Billy. Billy.
Hi, Billy.
Lord. Can you tell us how you passed?
I don't think there's anyone here anymore.
Can you give us a name of who we're here with? Oh, Samuel.
During that period, an Irish master mason and his family were lodging there. The wife is said to have stabbed her husband to death, straight through his neck, with his own Masonic chisel.
Do you want us to leave? No. No.
Say hello.
Do you want us to stay? You can.
It's a holy relic, it's worth a fortune.
Can you say anyone's name here? Can you say my name? I swear it just whispered Marnie. Captured some pretty weird evidence today. Might not be the best, but it's definitely an experience.
Oh god, most definitely.
And the beginning of something that isn't even close to the end. So we shall see you guys next time for who knows what. Thank you guys so much for watching. I enjoyed filming today's video so much. Even editing it was so fun. So if you enjoyed it, please let me know and I can do many more videos like this. There's so much stuff in the works, so subscribe so you don't miss out. And I love you guys so much. Thank you for joining me today and I'll see you next time.